Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another episode of Rendezvous with Anza Saqib on CxO Global TV. CxO Global Forum is a knowledge-sharing platform for all C-levels across the globe. We take massive pride in contributing to the knowledge economy with our league of extraordinary thought leaders. Today as well, we've got a very special lady with us. She's young but very accomplished. So without further ado, let's welcome Huda Garib. She's the founder and CEO of eMagine. Welcome to the show, Huda.
Thanks, Anza. Glad to be here.
I'm so glad. So let's jump right into it. I know a little about your personal and professional journey. Ladies and gentlemen, surprisingly, we went to school together. So this is one special interview for me. However, I think what the audience would be most interested in knowing is, can you walk us through your whole professional journey and experiences so far?
Anza, look, it's a long journey. Each of us have our own stories to tell, but to give you a synopsis of it all, it really begins with, when we're in an undergrad, we think we're going to do something probably world-changing, to say the least. And I kind of realized that once I was done with my undergrad, while I was looking for a job, what you call real job in HR, turned out to be actually, in that transition, I ended up getting a teaching job at our old school, Coincidentally Behavior Academy. What was supposed to have been a 3 to 6 month stint till I managed to get something in the corporate world resulted in just lifetime calling, because that initial exposure while I was in that transition phase actually made me realize a passion of mine of how fond I am of the education industry. And unfortunately, the way we've gone through it as kids, it's pretty much the same thing of what our parents, our grandparents, and so on have gone through. Things haven't really evolved. The whole idea is to just keep it there. The whole objective of holistic learning, we see things around the globe. Instead of being stuck with that simple ABC, we kind of, the whole philosophy behind eMagine is to bring you more, to open your eyes. Our catchphrase has always been dare to imagine, and I use that literally all over the place. Because hey, if that's what architects did when they started building the weird structures throughout Europe, that's what the founder of KitKat did when he wrote cat with K. So we've seen things differently. And it's not that they were special human beings and we aren't, and the beggar who's down our street probably has the same amount of creativity as we do. It's just how we can enable each other, be as a source of strength to each other rather than just putting each other down and living in that insanely competitive environment. And that's pretty much where eMagine came. Behold.
Right.
We get everyone together, we dare to imagine, we act as a source of strength. And it's not just me living in my community or my classroom or my city. It's now this idea of global citizenship. So how can we work and collaborate with each other and be better global citizens at the end of the day? That's what we want you to do at eMagine.
So if I were to ask you, let's sum up in one sentence, what problem eMagine is trying to solve, what would you say?
The concept of being able to actually work more hands-on rather than theoretical learning. That's it.
Perfect. So moving on, how do you view the startup ecosystem of Pakistan? Because you have been a startup founder.
Anza, look, unfortunately, we all know that being a third world country, it's not only Pakistan, it's most South Asian countries. They aren't number one, it's a very patriarchal society. Where being a woman as it is, you are unfortunately treated as largely a second-class citizen. And it's more of a be the boss culture where the male gender, especially over the age of 40 or 50, is given more. It's unfortunately is that way. But the good thing that we have seen with the startup culture gradually evolving, and a lot of us youngsters actually coming back from getting all that exposure from our education from different parts of the world, is that we are trying to skew the graph a bit. It's still difficult, I'm not going to lie. Each of us have our own journeys, but hey, at the end of the day, what I really like is about our culture, finally, that we are starting to back each other up. And that's what matters most. And I'm very optimistic about it, frankly speaking.
Sounds very encouraging. So what would some of your policy recommendations be? What are some of the things that need to be done towards making a more enabling environment for startups to thrive in Pakistan?
Frankly, one of the things that I have seen, and this is probably the biggest advice that I'll give, that allow youngsters to bring in their fresh innovation. We have a huge culture of family businesses in this country, and that's great because you need all that experience. And they're the ones who basically kept the economy afloat. But hey, allow the youngsters to bring that change. If, for instance, you're a sugar mill or a rice producer or whatever, let them diverge a little bit into something more end product for the customer end. So number one, let that allowance come in. And number two, for startups, one thing we haven't noticed is the financial availability coming in. This is something I have faced myself. You dig into every penny in your savings and you realize that it hits you at times. You want to throw in the towel and you're like, hey, if there's no returns coming in, why on earth am I doing this? But when you finally find people in our society, in our culture, and when we start communicating with people world over as well, you realize you pick up from everyone's stories, and that's where you realize that finance, obviously money talks, and you need that money to start investing. So be it, I'm not saying everyone deserves billions of dollars of seed capital in their startup. I'm not saying that. Everyone needs to go through their own journey, and venture capitalists obviously have their amount of budgets too. But how about tech companies sort of make it easy for someone to loan a product, or those who need some other sort of assets, you just gradually pay it off in installments or loan it or something like that, rather than having to pay that lump sum of money, which is unaffordable in most cases.
Right, makes sense, absolutely. So moving on, let's talk a little about what inspires you to show up at work every single day.
Frankly, it's the community. The way the community supports, the way the community grows, and that passion that you see when you go at work and you realize, especially when I'm in a session, be it on field or be it virtual. And on field, we all know there's a different vibe altogether. When you're in that passion, that excitement, that exuberance, and you realize everyone has these ideas that it's bubbling over and they want to do something with their lives. Everyone has a dream. It's just how can we support each other? And you never know, I have a skill that you don't have and vice versa. And together we can be a force that will be hard to reckon with.
Absolutely, very, very motivating to hear. Now, what would your advice be for mid-career professionals?
Look, I know when we reach that stage in life, I mean, you and I haven't reached there yet, but when we do reach there, I know that it can get, and this is what you hear from a lot of people, that, hey, we're stuck here, we're doing this for families, and obviously you have the plethora of responsibilities that builds up on your shoulders. But don't let that demotivate you. I mean, there's a thing known as a side hustle, and it can eat in a lot in your personal life. It can eat in a lot in your social life, especially if you're one of those social birds. But hey, if you want to do something, then at least start sowing the seed for it. And if it may not, not every seed is going to fruit, but at least give yourself that shot. Don't reach the age of, when you're literally lying on your deathbed, you're like, hey, I could have done this. Let there be no regrets. It's going to hurt. And the worst, what's going to happen? Your fruitation's not going to happen. You're probably going to get a bit of slack from everyone that, hey, how did you go muck up? And this was a very foolish idea. And you're just a dreamer. People are going to talk either way. Let them. Don't people talk about us on a daily basis, the amount of criticism we hear? But hey, there's a very famous saying, right? Something along the lines of people opt to support those when it seems like famous enough.
Yeah.
Well, to get to that fame, you at least need to start somewhere.
Point taken. Now, moving on, let's talk a little about how do you perceive failure? Because this is something that we've seen a lot of startups, time in, time out, they have been, failing at one stage or the other.
It's inevitable. Everyone's going to fail at some point. For failure, yes, it's easier said than done. It kills you inside, and you don't know where you're standing. The ground under your feet feels like it's shaken, and you'd rather be like eaten up by the earth than just be standing, because it's not only all the hours and mental faculties that you put in trying to develop whatever product or idea you're working with. It's everyone has a bit of an ego, and people talk. That gets hurt really bad. It plays down on you emotionally. It plays down on you mentally. And to a certain extent, people take failure that badly that it can also result in physical health being detrimental at times. But hey, why you have two options: either sulk or continue sulking, or either use that as a learning experience, get back from scratch and start working. I mean, we talk about, if anything else, one of my favorite examples is J.K. Rowling. It took her eons and an immense amount of hard work to get to where she is, and this amazing, phenomenal woman that she is. I mean, if nothing else, let's learn from examples of like her, people in our own country. They've done great jobs, and you just need to look around you. And if nothing else, what I say is look inside your own home, because it doesn't matter what people have given sacrifices, be it your elders, be it your siblings, be it your friends. They've actually put up probably with an immense amount of your rants and raves without you realizing it to get to where you are. So it's an entire army working together. Failure is part of the process. But again, dust yourself up and rise back. Easier said than done, but if you can take the prayers and blessings of that army and actually be passionate and focused and equally ambitious without ensuring that it's not cutthroat, ruthless competition, hey, you're definitely at some point going to get rewards for your hard work.
Very pertinent points made indeed. Now let's talk about, what do you like doing in your free time? Because we know that as startup founders, you guys are literally working like 18 hours a day at times. So it can become quite a challenge to maintain a work-life balance, right? So what do you essentially do when you're not working?
I mean, obviously, every startup founder is going to tell you that, hey, is there anything known as free time? Our social lives at times feel as merged into our professional lives, because most of our social gatherings are because to try and get some networking done or try and have an off-the-cuff meeting with someone or the other. But frankly speaking, I mean, I know, as contrary as it seems to the sort of image that we try to portray as startup founders, especially someone like me in the education industry, that we have to be there all over the place and be as social as possible. Would you believe it if I told you I love just being in my own company, the little I get? I mean, a trip to nature is something that anywhere in the world I'll take. A crazy hike somewhere up top in the mountains, get a chance to write a little bit, dabble a bit here and there, just chill out, jigsaw puzzles, stuff like that. It just tests you, it helps you grow, but it has its own solace. And one of the funniest things and weirdest things that I loved enjoying is every time I was super stressed, I cleaned, massively cleaned. Yeah, I cannot tell you how cathartic that was. Like even the grooves of the tiles used to be cleaned thoroughly with a toothbrush and every possible cleaner in my bathroom pantry. So that's how much I enjoy my own company.
Sounds interesting.
You need your own time. Look, we are all stuck in this huge rut, and it gets overwhelming. As much as we like to deny it at times, we're like, oh, we're good to go. It gets a bit overwhelming, and you just need your own personal space to let it out.
Agreed. So you had some wonderful advice for the audience today, but let's talk about what is the best piece of advice that you have received so far in your life, and who did it come from?
Frankly, there is an army of people who have actually echoed the same thing time and time again. From family to very close friends and to a few mentors, and mentioning them would probably take the entire 20 minutes. But they know who they are, and what works wonderfully well is the advice is that you're going to fall. That's okay. But you have a vision that could eventually sort of change at least where we stand. And if you're really passionate and you really care about what you do, then at the end of the day, don't give up. But never let it come at the expense. Never let your success come at the expense of someone who is also trying to make their place in this market.
Great. Wonderful advice after all. So moving on now, unfortunately, we've come to the end of today's session, but I would still like to ask you two things in particular. Number one being, what is your life's motto? Like, what does the next couple of years look like for Huda, the CEO of eMagine?
continue doing what I do and trying to hopefully build up the eMagine community to hopefully make a difference someday, inshallah, not only in Karachi, not only in Pakistan, but work collaboratively. And it could be that Huda Garib is working on a couple of different projects. I mean, I do have a couple of freelance projects as well on with me. And you never know, it might inshallah someday come into something big. Again, when the time comes, I don't like to count my eggs before they're hatched, but optimistic, hard work, a lot of prayers from not only myself, but from a lot of people, and a lot of support and advice. And so, inshallah, you never know what doors might open up.
Great. We wish you all the best. Thank you very much for your time. It's been an honor and a privilege talking to you today. Please keep.
Thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much, Anza.
Thank you. But before we sign off, I would like to ask you, what do you think is the utility of forums like CxO Global?
Phenomenal. It allows us a chance to actually meet people like us in the market who are more experienced than us, and we all get a chance to learn from each other. Everyone's specialities, and the community only grows from here.
Point taken. Thank you very much for your time, Huda.
Thank you.
And we hope to hear more from you soon. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for next time. We'll have another special guest. That's it for today, but please keep us updated with your comments and feedback.